Coming up, gigantic statues, hidden cities, eclipse calendars, and more. Join us as we have a look at some of the major archaeological discoveries of 2017. Colossus. A Roman-era grave was uncovered near the town of Minya, a collection of ancient tombs showing a possible graveyard. And a goldsmith's mausoleum containing hundreds of relics are just some of the fascinating finds in 2017 in Egypt. Perhaps more impressive than any of these was the giant sculpture that was unearthed in a suburb of Cairo. Firstly, archaeologists came across the 3-ton torso of the behemoth statue, later discovering both the head along with some toes. And with these significant finds, they believe that the entirety of the statue may shortly be brought to light. This kind of seems like a logical conclusion. It's a massive 29-foot tall statue and was initially thought to be a depiction of Ramses the Great, based solely upon the proximity to his temple. However, upon closer inspection, it was uncovered that it does have a special engraving, and one that was used only by a certain pharaoh. This would make the statue part of the 26th dynasty, making it the largest statue of the late period that's ever been found in Egypt. Hunley. 1864 may seem a little bit early for a war submarine, but on February 18th of that year, a Confederate sub by the name of H.L. Hunley would become the first sub to sink a battleship. It would attack and sink the USS Housatonic, although the sub also disappeared on the same day. The mystery of this questionable success has gone unknown up until this year, although the submarine itself was found in 1995 and then raised in the year 2000. All 8 of its crew members were found at their stations, and there was no sign of any kind of escape. So it just begs the obvious question: what exactly killed the crew of the Hunley? Well, initially, it was thought that the Housatonic had time to shoot holes in the sub and then sink it, or that the sub may have hit an obstacle on its way back. However, this would be solved in 2017 using scale research experiments. In what some would call an embarrassing situation, the Hunley's own torpedo is believed to have killed its crew. The weapon was called a spar torpedo and was used more like a spear than a missile. It was never meant to detach itself, and it rammed into the Housatonic. Naturally, the explosion was a little bit problematic for the submarine crew. Everyone was instantly killed or incapacitated by the blast, and then drowned at their stations as the sub went down. As you may have guessed, the spar torpedo isn't a popular weapon of choice anymore, but times were tough back in the mid-19th century. Easter Island. Carl Lipo is an archaeologist, and in 2017 would be the first to contradict the borderline suicidal claims of the island's past. Lipo argues that the war stories are all oral, and that over 300 years, the story can change quite a bit. He based his idea on the fact of the humans' remains that were found on the island, only about 2.5% showing battle wounds. Evidence like this actually discredits the idea of massive infighting, and as to the colossal deforestation, there's reason now to believe that the Polynesian rat is to blame. This horrific rodent eats palm nuts and saplings, which essentially destroys huge swaths of forest, which would work to degrade the soil and lower the crop count. The final point that Lipo makes is that South Americans probably contacted the island well before Europeans did, and that contact may have caused slave raids, along with new introduced diseases that decimated the population before Europe was able to do the same thing. This discovery and argument is one of the more interesting things to occur this year, and helps to answer some of the deeper questions about possibly the most mysterious island in the world. The Eclipse. 2017 was a year that contained a spectacular solar eclipse, but it was also a year when we learned about an earlier version of the same. The earliest ever recorded eclipse, to be exact. Researchers at the University of Cambridge were able to pinpoint the celestial event to October 30th, 1207 BC. This specific date was worked out by comparing ancient Egyptian and biblical texts And with this, scholars were able to map out other historical and future eclipses, taking into account the Earth's rotation over time. The biblical side comes from Joshua, when he led the people of Israel to Canaan, saying that the sun stood still and the earth stopped. Using this time frame, scholars could place the Israelites in Canaan when they were defeated by the Pharaoh just 5 years into his reign. Putting both groups together, there's only one eclipse that they both could have seen, so there's now a fixed date to use as a beacon, which works to add historical dates to other amazing events like the reign of Ramses the Great, a Viking. In the 1880s, archaeologists would uncover a 10th century Viking gravesite on Björkö Island in Sweden. There were 1,100 graves, but even the early scientists were able to tell that one in particular was special. This grave stood on an elevated terrace above all of the rest, next to a garrison, and came complete with a sword, a shield, a spear, an axe, and a battle knife. Interestingly enough, there was also a board game on the skeleton's lap, and it was a strategy game, indicating that this soldier was a tactician who made military decisions. In 2017, however, scientists were able to determine that this star strategist and war leader was just a little bit different than they had initially expected. Specifically, that it was a woman. This is the first high-ranking female Viking that's ever been discovered, but the team of scientists believe that there are many more. This amazing discovery works to change the common conception of Vikings and gender norms in the 10th century, and they're presently working to check on other grave sites in Denmark, looking for more early female leaders. Drones. Satellites can be an amazing tool for taking photography of difficult-to-reach areas, but they are not so good at noting smaller changes in texture that might indicate a ruin or even an old settlement. Fortunately enough, the recent uptake of personal drones has done amazing things for the world of archaeology. These high-quality images have already helped to uncover shipwrecks and ruins, and one of which was a famous lost city. Kalagardarband is a city founded by Alexander the Great and is located in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. Created in the 4th century BC, it was famed for its wine trade. However, the city was lost to records some centuries after and has been missing for over 2,000 years. Now, initially, a CIA spy satellite would take photos of the region in the 1960s, but scholars were finally able to access the information in the 90s. Then, in this year, they were able to actually discover the ruin. A venture between Iraqi and British archaeologists would use personal drones to take high-definition photos of the lost city. And as of this moment, early excavation has already revealed statues along with Greek coins. Due to the conflict in the area, however, progress has been slow, and scholars are hopeful about the quality of the relics that they'll find in one of the lost cities of history. Antikythera. When archaeologists find an interesting piece in a dig, it can be hard to know exactly how much there is and when to stop searching. The wreck of the Antikythera was found back in the early 1900s, and scientists, well, they're still finding really cool objects located in and around the sunken ship. The wreck itself may be most famous for containing the first analog computer, since the relic dates back some 2,050 years. However, the most recent and more exciting discovery is the arm of a statue, carved entirely out of bronze. While it may not seem like a whole lot when compared to a mystery device, bronze statues are some of the most rare artifacts ever. And it isn't because people didn't love bronze statues. Far from it. The fact is that bronze was usually melted down and turned into more useful things. Anything from weaponry to armor was used and made out of bronze, and unfortunately most statues met this utilitarian fate. Also, the arm doesn't really seem to match any armless statue that's ever been found, so archaeologists believe that the rest of the statue, and possibly more bronze statues themselves, could be located just below the surface. The wreck has been deemed priceless, as it could help scholars to learn about ancient statues and their transport, but will also be the first excavation done on site using modern tools. Metro Aqueducts. Workers on Rome's new metro line would stumble across a sensational discovery of enormous importance. After calling in archaeologists, it would turn out that they had come across one of the oldest aqueducts in Roman history. At just over 100 feet long and located about 60 feet below the street level, it's estimated to be 2,300 years old and is thought to be part of the Aqua Appia, the original aqueduct of Rome. As Rome made more new and advanced aqueducts, this one would become used as a sewer. While it may sound a little bit disgusting, archaeologists are supremely impressed with the condition of the leftovers and animal remains. It might also lend some insight into the dietary habits and preferred pets of the ancient Roman culture. The present plan is to dismantle the aqueduct and rebuild it in a new location for the public as a glimpse into the amazing ancient history. It was January 1st in Malibu, California, when researchers from HRL Laboratories achieved a breakthrough in ceramic 3D printing technology, where they took 3D printing to a whole new level. And if you don't think that it's impressive, let me just tell you that ceramics are one of the hardest materials in the world. The 3D printers, which can carry the molecular structure silicon, made them close to perfect.